Hey everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I want to share the fantasy books that I want to read this year. When I was younger, fantasy was the main genre that I read. Of course, I was reading children's fantasy fiction and young adult fantasy fiction more, but during the years that I was at university, I think that I read a lot more fantasy fiction, and I certainly read more series than I do now. Last year, I didn't read much fantasy at all. The year before that, I didn't either. And it's something that I definitely want to be getting back into, because I do feel like I missed it. Something that has been putting me off reading fantasy is that most of the books in fantasy, and in fact the main ones that I want to read, are part of series. And series fiction has been something that I've been avoiding, simply because it means dedicating a lot of your time to books, and with everything that I have on trying to get done at the moment, it doesn't really seem to fit. But I'm thinking, this year, if I really am going to knuckle down and allow myself to be slower and properly read books and invest in them, then I do actually have the time to dedicate to series. The first book on this list is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I have this on audiobook ready to listen to once I have finished reading the novella Edgedancer. I've borrowed that from the library. In fact, it's due back quite soon, so I should probably get on to reading that. This is the third book in the Stormlight archive. I've actually listened to the first two books on audiobook. These are very hefty books, which take me a very long time to listen to. My friend Lindsay can read them extremely quickly. I think she spoke to me about Words of Radiance and she read that book in 2 days. So I'm looking forward to Oathbringer, and I do enjoy the series, but I am also completely bogged down by the idea that I can never see why these books have to be so long. I still haven't yet figured out why the books have to be over 1,000 pages long each. There are quite a few things that I would cut out. I think that Sanderson can be a bit too heavy on the battles. The fact that he's able to craft worlds and talk about so much and create so many allegories within his fiction is quite good, but in the grand scheme of things, I do think that the books could be pared down if you remove some battle scenes and some of the repetitive scenes that really don't advance the story any further. Keeping with Brandon Sanderson, I also want to read The Well of Ascension by him. This is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy, but I did think that at the end of the first one there was a perfectly well-rounded ending that suited the story and couldn't actually see any point of going further. However, again, this is Lindsay's fault. She tells me that I need to read this book. She tells me that there's great plotting in here, that the series benefits from being 3 books, so I'm going to read it at some point. I'm going to try and read it this year. Next, I have the first in a series, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is the first book in the Gentleman's Bastard series, and I have no idea what it's about. Once again, Lindsay recommended it. I think Lizzie recommended it, and I really need to actually get through it, because this book came out in 2006. And I planned on buying it in 2006 at the age of 14, and I didn't. And I've never owned it before, and I still haven't read it, and so I've bought this copy from the charity shop with the intention of reading it. I have the second book somewhere in my bedroom, and I really need to actually jump on this bandwagon and see what all the fuss is about. The next book that I am actually currently reading, which is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the second book in his Kingkiller Chronicles, following the character of Quoth. I've mentioned before how The Name of the Wind is a book that I have reread, even though I didn't particularly enjoy it the first time around. And whilst I'm enjoying this book, I am finding some scenes that I think are unnecessary and are only there to fill up pages. But I am enjoying the fact of just going through this slowly, reading a few pages at a time and getting to spend some time with these characters. In fact, I actually went through the first 300 pages quite quickly, so what slowed me down is this whole shift. And this is what happened with the first book. I really enjoyed the first 200 or so pages, and then something happened that I didn't enjoy the direction that the character was going in, and it's overall spoiled the story for me. However, I also don't think that I've got to the actual plot in here yet. In fact, I don't know whether there is a plot, whether it is just, as we are told, this chronicle of Quoth going around and doing these things. Next, I have Anansi Boys by Neil Gaiman. I think this might be the last Gaiman novel that I actually have to read. I think the radio plays are still available on BBC iPlayer, so I also want to go and listen to them as well. I think I'm going to listen to them before I read the book. I'm not sure what this book's about, and I'm hoping that I'm going to enjoy it. Next, I have The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. I borrowed this book from the library after seeing so many people talk about it. It's a series that I want to get into. It's not going with the typical westernised version of what fantasy fiction is. I think it's taking more Eastern influences, and so far I've read 2 chapters and quite like it, and think that I might actually enjoy this series. And finally, I have Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb, the 3rd and final book in the Tawny trilogy. This is a series that I have been reading for 18 months now. The first book I took my time on because I was writing the second Doris book. The second book I took my time on because I wasn't enjoying it as much as the first book. And this book I haven't got to because I didn't enjoy the second book. This was the book of the series that I'd looked forward to the most, because Sam over at Sam's Nonsense calls this book her favourite in the series. Because of that, I think the hype that I have built up myself has led to me leaving this book to fall by the wayside. It's definitely a book that I will be getting to this year, because I do have hopes of finishing this book and the other 2 series in the realm of the Elderling series this year. And them's the books. If you have any fantasy recommendations, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I do have a lot of plans for my reading and my writing this year, but that doesn't mean that I won't be able to get to the books at some point in the future, and will always be looking for recommendations to further my knowledge of this genre. I didn't mention N.K. Jemisin in this list because I don't own any of her books, nor was I able to get them from the library in time for this video. It's also a series that I would like to get to in the future before Lily comes and starts shouting at me to read those books. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.